The wine glass shattered before my daughter said the words. Grant's hand closed around Emily's wrist beneath the restaurant table. Then she looked straight at me. "Dad, did you ever fix the blue porch light? We had never owned one." The sentence meant, do not confront him. Get me somewhere safe. I had taught it to Emily when she was 12, when my work sometimes followed me home. I was 64 now with a stiff knee and a medical transport van outside. To Grant, I was an aging driver who smelled of coffee and antiseptic. I let him believe it. As I bent for the broken glass, Emily pushed a brass key beneath my palm. A blue tag hung from it numbered 314. Grant tightened his grip and whispered that she would regret embarrassing him. Hours later, that key would open the first door into a plan he had built for months. If your child used a secret code in front of you, would you act at once or wait for proof? Tell me below. And subscribe to follow what Emily had risked everything to hide. 3 weeks before the dinner, life still fit inside a paper route log in a one-bedroom house in Henrico County. I woke at 5, heated coffee in the dented steel pot Claire had refused to throw away, and checked the weather against the ache in my right knee. By 6, my white medical transport van was moving through Richmond. I drove dialysis patients, veterans, and people whose children lived too far away to take them to appointments. Grant Holloway called it wheelchair taxi work. The first time he said that, Emily kicked him under my kitchen table. He laughed, kissed her temple, and claimed he was teasing. I laughed too. That was how Grant operated. Every cut arrived wrapped as a joke, and if the wounded person objected, he became the injured one. Emily was 32 and worked as a physical therapist at St. Catherine's Rehabilitation Center. Her mother had died 6 years earlier from ovarian cancer, leaving Emily a narrow brick house on Hanover Avenue. Claire had bought it before our marriage and later placed it in a separate trust for our daughter. It was not a mansion. The porch leaned slightly, the upstairs pipes complained in winter, and the backyard was barely wide enough for 2 lawn chairs. But every doorway held Claire's fingerprints. Emily called it home. Grant called it underperforming equity. He was 36, polished quick with names, and running for an open city council seat while working for a commercial development firm. He remembered waiters sent handwritten thank you notes and volunteered at charity auctions where cameras happened to be present. For the first year, he made Emily feel seen. He brought dinner to her clinic, listened when she talked about difficult patients, and asked me for permission before proposing. I wanted to like him. For a while I did. Then small things began changing. Emily stopped calling from her car because Grant said distracted driving was dangerous. Her Sunday visits became joint visits. If I asked her a question, he answered. When she received a promotion, Grant explained that the longer hours would interfere with wedding planning. When she laughed too loudly at an old story about Claire, his hand would settle on her shoulder and the laugh would end. I wrote none of that in a police notebook. I had not carried one for 9 years. I kept a cheap spiral pad in the van for mileage pickup times, medication bags, and anything a dispatcher might need. On the inside cover, Claire had once written, "Facts first, Thomas, then feelings." She had meant our grocery arguments. The sentence had followed me through 27 years with the Richmond Police Department, including my final 8 supervising investigators who handled domestic violence and financial coercion. I never told Grant much about that career. I did not hide it from Emily, and there were photographs in a box at my house, but I had stopped wearing my service on my sleeve. The work had cost me birthdays, sleep, and cartilage in my knee. After Claire died, I wanted a job where getting someone safely from one place to another was enough. Grant saw the van, the old lunch bag, and the careful way I descended stairs. He decided those details added up to harmless. People often mistake quiet for empty space. They pour their real selves into it. 2 weeks before the dinner, Emily asked me to replace the back gate latch at her house. Grant was at a campaign meeting. While I worked, she stood beside me, twisting a small brass key on a blue plastic tag. The number 314 was written in black marker. When I asked what it opened, she slid it into her pocket and said it belonged to an old storage locker at the bus terminal. Her answer came too quickly. I did not push. Instead, I reminded her of the blue porch light. The phrase came from a game Claire and I created when Emily was 12. One of my cases involved a man who had followed an investigator's family. We taught Emily that if an adult made her feel unsafe, she could ask about a blue porch light. It meant 3 things: do not argue with the danger, move toward a safe adult, and leave something that shows where to look. We never had to use it. Years passed and it became a family joke. At the gate, Emily stared at the new latch and said, "I remember." Then Grant's car turned onto the street. She stepped away from me so quickly that the brass key struck the wooden fence. Grant came through the yard carrying white roses and a smile. He praised my repair, then tested the latch twice, as if inspecting a contractor's work. He told Emily he had tried to reach her 6 times. She said her phone was inside. He held out his hand without a word. She went to get it. She loses track of things, he told me. I'm helping her stay organized. I looked at the fresh latch, the blue tag key, and the roses he had bought before he knew whether there had been a fight. 3 details. None was proof. Together they formed a question. The invitation to dinner arrived the next afternoon. Grant said he wanted to celebrate a major step toward our shared future at the Jefferson Room, a restaurant where campaign donors like to be seen. He asked me to drive because he planned to order an expensive bottle of wine. Then he added, "It'll give you a chance to feel useful." Emily said nothing. In the silence behind her, I heard the old gate latch click shut. The Jefferson Room put white cloths on tables and soft light on people who wanted their worst decisions to look elegant. Grant arrived in a navy suit. Emily wore a green dress Claire had helped her choose years earlier. A thin band of concealer covered the inside of her left wrist. At the table, he ordered a steak for her. Emily had not eaten red meat in 4 years. She started to tell the server, but Grant said she'll have what she's supposed to have. The server looked at Emily. Emily nodded. He pulled a leather folder from his briefcase. Inside were color renderings of townhouses and a page titled Mercer Holloway Family Asset Plan. Emily's mother's house appeared on the first line with a value beside it. Grant tapped the figure as if it already belonged to him. "Claire left that property to Emily," I said. Grant smiled without showing teeth. "And Emily is building a marriage. Married people don't hide assets from each other. You drive sick people, Tom. You don't structure households." The server brought the wine. Grant filled Emily's glass after she covered it with her hand. When she moved it away, the stem tipped. The glass struck the plate and shattered. Grant caught her wrist under the table. His face remained pleasant for the room. "Dad," Emily said, looking at me, "did you ever fix the blue porch light?" For half a second, every protective instinct I had fought for control of my body. I wanted to stand, remove his hand, and tell the room exactly what he was. But the code did not mean rescue me loudly. It meant help me leave without making the danger worse. "Not yet," I said. "The wiring is more complicated than I thought." I bent to collect my napkin. The brass key touched my palm. Its blue tag read 314. A small crescent of blood marked one edge. Emily had cut her finger when the glass broke, but she had used the injury to hide the pass. The server offered to bring a first aid kit. Grant refused for Emily. I looked directly at her and asked if she wanted one. She said yes. That single word changed his expression. The smile remained, but the muscles beside his mouth hardened. While the server cleaned Emily's finger, I asked Grant about the asset plan. Questions made him expansive. He explained that after the wedding, Emily would sign a limited power of attorney so he could manage the renovation, refinance the Hanover house, and place the proceeds into his development partnership. He called it efficient. "Has the trust approved a transfer?" I asked. Emily said, "I haven't agreed to refinance anything." Grant's hand went still. He told the server we were finished. Then he turned to Emily and spoke quietly enough that nearby tables could pretend not to hear. "We discussed what happens when you undermine me." I asked what happened. Grant looked at my gray hair, my drugstore glasses, and the medical transport logo on my jacket. "Family conversations aren't part of your route, driver." Emily flinched before I moved. That told me she expected movement from him, not me. I set cash on the table and said the van was ready. Grant insisted Emily would ride with him. I did not challenge the decision in public. Instead, I walked beside them and kept the valet, the restaurant manager, and 2 guests within view. Isolation is where control grows teeth. At the curb, Grant's campaign aide called about a donor. While he answered, Emily opened the passenger door. I said, "Your cut may need stitches." "It's small. St. Catherine's urgent care is open." She understood the offer. Grant ended his call before she could accept it. "I'll take care of my fiancé," he said. Emily looked at me once. Her eyes moved toward my left ankle, where the key pressed against my sock, then toward Grant's black sedan. "Stay with the evidence," the glance said. "Do not make him search you." I watched them drive away. Then I asked the valet manager to preserve the curb camera from that hour, because a passenger had been injured. I did not claim a crime. I gave my name, the time, and my contact information. He said company policy required a formal request, but he marked the file against routine deletion for 7 days. Back in my van, I wrote the exact sentences I remembered. I wrote where each person sat, which risk Grant held when Emily used the code, and how the key reached me. I separated what I saw from what I inferred. Old habits returned like lights in a hallway. At 9:42, Emily texted, "Home safe." "Sorry, dinner was awkward. Grant says you misunderstood." The wording did not sound like her. Emily never called fear awkward. At 9:44, another message appeared and vanished before I could open it. The preview showed only 4 words. "Locker lease names you." Grant called 1 minute later. "Emily is emotional," he said. "Don't encourage it." I asked to speak with her. "She's asleep." In the background, I heard Emily say, "Give it back." Then the line disconnected. I placed the blue key beside Claire's steel coffee pot. Number 314 was not a plea for me to punish Grant. It was a direction. Somewhere in Richmond, my daughter had left something she believed was safer with a quiet driver than inside her own home. This key belonged to a locker at Main Street Station, not the bus terminal Emily had mentioned. The station directory showed small storage downstairs, but the lockers opened at 6 in the morning. I spent the night at my kitchen table, resisting every urge to drive to Hanover Avenue and pound on the door. At 518, I called Safe Harbor, a Richmond domestic violence program I had worked with years earlier. I did not use an old title or ask for a favor. I used the public hotline and spoke to an advocate named Naomi Reed. She reminded me that Emily was an adult, that leaving could increase danger, and that my first task was to preserve her choices. "The code is consent to help," Naomi said. "It is not consent to take over." At 6:03, I entered the station. Locker 314 stood near a vending machine beneath a camera. The brass key opened it cleanly. Inside sat a canvas therapy bag, a cracked phone, a sealed envelope with my name, and a red notebook held shut by a rubber band. I photographed the locker before touching anything and wrote the time in my route log. "Dad, if I gave you this key, I finally admitted I cannot manage him alone. Please do not confront Grant until I am somewhere he cannot reach. The locker lease lists you as the authorized second user. Take the bag. Call Naomi at Safe Harbor. I am not ready for police unless the documents prove what I think they prove. I need you to believe me without deciding for me." I called Naomi again before opening the bag. She stayed on the line while I inventoried the contents. The cracked phone was Emily's old device. Grant had thrown it against a kitchen wall after she spoke to a male coworker. The screen no longer responded, but a repair receipt showed that a technician had recovered its data to an encrypted drive. The drive was taped inside the red notebook. This notebook did not read like a diary. Emily had learned something from Claire and me after all. Each entry listed a date, time, exact words, visible injury, witness, and what happened afterward. Grant canceled a lunch with friends by sending messages from Emily's phone. He removed her name from a joint savings account after she questioned a campaign expense. He contacted her clinic pretending to be her and declined an interview for rehabilitation director. He photographed her anxiety medication and threatened to tell the licensing board she was unstable. The entries grew worse after the engagement. Grant changed the alarm code at the Hanover house, then told Emily she had forgotten it. He hid her car keys before work and later produced them from her own coat. He kept a spreadsheet of what he called episodes, documenting every time she cried, disagreed, or asked to visit me alone. March 8, 11:20 p.m. Grant said once I sign the marriage documents, he can prove I am not competent to manage the house. He said Dad is old, alone, and easy to discredit. He said moving to St. Louis will separate me from everyone who remembers me before him. Inside the bag were copies of 2 documents. The first was a draft limited power of attorney giving Grant authority over real estate transactions. Emily's name was typed below an empty signature line. The second was a letter on clinic stationery stating that Emily had resigned for health reasons. She had not written it. A file properties printout showed the document had been created on a computer registered to Holloway Development. The most important file was an email chain between Grant and his office manager, Lena Price. Grant asked Lena to prepare a notarized acknowledgement for the power of attorney and wrote, "Use the signature from the clinic release if Emily gets difficult." Lena replied that she would not notarize a signature she had not witnessed. Grant answered, "Then find someone who values employment." That chain still needed authentication. Screenshots can be altered. A defense attorney could attack dates, context, or custody. I copied nothing to my personal computer. Naomi connected us with attorney Maya Chen, who specialized in protective orders and financial abuse. Maya arranged for a licensed forensic examiner to create a verified image of the drive and phone. She also advised me not to contact Lena directly. At 8, I called my dispatcher and took personal leave. At 9, Emily's clinic called me. Grant had listed me years earlier as her emergency contact, and a supervisor named Dr. Sanjay Patel wanted to know whether Emily was safe. Someone had emailed a resignation from her account at 712 that morning. The message cited a breakdown and immediate relocation. At 9:26, Grant called. Then he made a mistake. He said whatever she put in that locker is stolen company material. I had never mentioned a locker. I wrote his sentence word for word and told him future communication should go through Maya Chen. He called her a storefront lawyer and ended the call. 10 minutes later, Emily appeared at my front door wearing the green dress from dinner under Grant's raincoat. She had walked 6 blocks to a pharmacy and asked an employee to call a cab. Her left wrist was purple. In one hand, she carried only her driver's license. In the other, she held half of a torn document bearing what looked like her signature. "He practiced it," she said. "He practiced my name until it looked better than mine." I opened the door, but I did not pull her across the threshold. "Do you want to come in?" "Yes," she said. "And this time, I want the police to know." Naomi arrived before the patrol officer. That was deliberate. Emily wanted an advocate beside her when she described what had happened, and Maya wanted the torn document placed directly into an evidence envelope. I sat at the far end of my kitchen table and answered only when Emily asked me a question. Emily described the ride home from the restaurant. Grant had taken her phone and demanded the locker key. She told him she had lost it. At the house, he blocked the front door, read her messages, and made her watch while he sent the resignation email. When she refused to sign the power of attorney, he gripped her wrist and said he could use a cleaner version of her signature. He tore one practice page in half and threw it toward the fireplace. Emily recovered the unburned half after he fell asleep. The officer photographed her wrist and cut finger. He did not promise an arrest. He explained that the magistrate would evaluate the facts and that Emily could request an emergency protective order. Maya helped her state what she wanted: no contact, exclusive use of the Hanover house and police presence, while Grant collected essential belongings. Then the officer asked whether she had somewhere safe to stay. Emily looked at me. "I want to stay here tonight. Tomorrow I decide again." "That is enough," I said. After they left, she slept in my bedroom while I took the couch. I placed the blue key in a plain envelope and did not keep it in my pocket like a trophy. It was evidence of her choice, not mine. At 2, I stared at Claire's coffee pot and remembered a woman named Teresa Bell. She had been one of my cases 17 years earlier. Teresa recanted after her husband threatened to take their son. I had been so certain that pressure would save her that I spoke over her scheduled decisions around her and treated hesitation like disobedience. She stopped returning calls. Months later, another assault put her in intensive care. Teresa survived. She also told a review board that every man in the case, including me, had acted as if her life belonged to whoever spoke most confidently. She was right. I changed how our unit worked after that, bringing advocates in earlier and asking victims what outcome they could safely choose. The department praised the reform. Praise never erased the fact that I had learned it by failing someone. At 9, Maya called with the first verification. Dr. Patel confirmed that Emily had never resigned. Clinic servers showed the message came from an internet address assigned to Holloway Development. The forensic examiner confirmed the drive files retained consistent creation data, but authentication of the email chain would require Lena Price or company records. Emily listened on speakerphone. When Maya mentioned contacting Lena, Emily stiffened. Grant had fired another assistant after she questioned a campaign invoice. Lena had a teenage son and needed the health insurance. "I don't want her punished because of me," Emily said. That afternoon, the protective order was granted temporarily. Grant received notice through counsel. He responded with a public statement saying Emily was exhausted under the influence of an estranged father and receiving treatment for an emotional crisis. He did not name her medication, but the threat was clear. My old colleagues began calling after a local reporter recognized my name. I ignored them. The story was not retired Lieutenant Thomas Mercer returning to battle. It was Emily Mercer asking to be believed. Grant's campaign announced that the engagement celebration would proceed Saturday as a show of love and stability. He assumed Emily would attend because donors, cameras, and shame had always pulled her back into line. He sent her a message through Maya, "Come stand beside me and this disappears." Emily read it twice. "If I hide," she said, "he will tell everyone hiding proves I am sick." I asked what she wanted. She looked at the torn signature, the red notebook, and the temporary order on my table. "I want the truth preserved before he destroys the company records. I want Lena protected if she speaks. And if I enter that ballroom, I want to walk out by my own decision." That became our plan. not revenge, not a father's raid. Maya contacted the financial crimes detective assigned to the disputed documents. Naomi arranged a safety team. Dr. Patel preserved the clinic records. A title officer agreed to review any real estate packet presented for Emily's house. I contributed my timeline and then stepped back. For the first time since dinner, Emily ate a full meal. Before bed, she returned the blue key to me. "Keep it until Saturday," she said. "Not because I need you to save me, because I need one person there who remembers what it means." Grant made his next mistake because he needed an audience more than he needed caution. On Friday afternoon, his campaign coordinator called my transport company and booked my van for a donor with limited mobility. The pickup address was Holloway Development. The passenger was Grant's uncle, but Grant climbed in beside him. My dispatcher asked whether I wanted another driver assigned. I said no. The van had 2 visible notices stating that trips were recorded for passenger safety. Riders accepted the policy during booking. I checked both cameras, started my paper log, and did exactly the job Grant believed was beneath him. He barely acknowledged me. During the 20-minute ride, he joined a conference call through the van's speaker system. Lena Price was on the line with campaign counsel and a title agent named Marisol Vega. Grant spoke as if the plexiglass behind my seat made me deaf. He ordered Lena to bring the Mercer property packet to Saturday's engagement event. Marisol said she would not conduct a ceremonial signing without speaking privately to the owner. Grant replied that Emily's medical episode had activated his authority under a document already notarized. Marisol asked for the original. "You will have a certified copy," he said. "A power of attorney is not activated by your opinion about someone's health," she answered, "and it does not override a trust." Grant muted the call long enough to tell his uncle that professionals always invented obstacles before asking for more money. Then he unmuted and said Emily would publicly confirm everything. If she refused, the resignation letter and medication photos would establish that she lacked judgment. From the rear seat, his uncle asked, "What about her father?" Grant looked at my reflection in the mirror. "Tom, he drives a van. He'll stand where we put him." I kept my eyes on the road. Lena said quietly, "I will not bring a false notary page." Grant's voice changed. "Your son's coverage renews next month, correct?" Silence answered him. He told her the page would be on his desk by 5. Then he described the deeper plan. Once the Hanover property secured a development loan, he would move Emily to St. Louis before the protective order hearing. A private evaluator he knew would document her instability. He wanted her father excluded from medical information and the house sold before anyone untangled the trust. At the hotel, I lowered the lift for Grant's uncle and recorded the drop-off time. Grant remained beside the van. "Emily will be at the celebration," he said. "Her attorney handles communication." I drove directly to the secure lot and asked the system administrator to preserve the trip without giving me a personal copy. Maya sent a formal preservation request. Detective Luis Ortega obtained the recording through the proper process and interviewed the dispatcher who had accepted the booking. By evening, Marisol Vega had contacted Maya. She had received a packet with a notary seal belonging to a notary who retired 2 years earlier. The signature resembled Emily's, but the middle initial curved in the same unusual way on both the power of attorney and the disputed clinic release. Marisol would not process it. She agreed to attend the engagement event because Grant had advertised a live family investment announcement to donors. Lena called Maya from a grocery store parking lot. She had preserved Grant's original email instructions and the document history on the company's server. She did not want to become a hero. She wanted her son insured and her name off a forged acknowledgement. Maya connected her with independent counsel and the detective. No one promised she would avoid every consequence. They promised she would not face Grant alone. Emily made her own verification. She logged into the trust portal with Maya present and found 3 failed attempts to add Grant as an authorized manager. Each attempt came from Holloway Development. The trustee, a regional bank, froze external changes and sent a representative to the scheduled announcement. By Friday night, the evidence no longer depended on one frightened person's word or one damaged phone. There was observed conduct clinic data, authenticated device records, a disputed seal company, emails, trust access logs, witnesses, and Grant's recorded instructions. Each piece had limits. Together, they told one story. Detective Ortega said the prosecutor had approved warrants for suspected forgery, computer trespass, and attempted financial fraud. But timing and execution were his responsibility, not mine. The temporary protective order remained a separate civil matter. Grant's cruelty at dinner was not the charge. His actions were. Emily chose to attend the event for one reason. Grant planned to use her silence as consent in front of donors and cameras. She would enter with Naomi, not on my arm. She would carry her own statement. Maya would stay close, and officers would remain outside the ballroom until needed. The only object in my pocket was the brass key with the blue tag. At the Jefferson Hotel, a campaign volunteer saw my van and directed me toward the service entrance. Grant had placed a card at the back of the ballroom that read Driver Thomas Mercer. Emily's place card was on stage beside his. Between them sat a leather folder marked Family Asset Signing. The ballroom held 140 people, 6 campaign banners, and one story Grant expected everyone to accept. On the screens behind the stage, photographs of him and Emily played beneath the words, "A future built together." In half the photographs, his hand was positioned at the back of her neck. Emily entered with Naomi at 1006. She wore a blue suit and no concealer on her wrist. The bruise was visible. Grant crossed the ballroom before anyone could stop him and kissed the air beside her cheek. Cameras captured something that looked tender from the front. From my angle, I saw him whisper, "Smile or I release the clinic file." Maya stepped between them and reminded Grant of the protective order. He moved back with both hands raised, performing innocence for the nearest donors. "I am trying to help my fiancé through a crisis." At 1015, he began the program. He thanked supporters, praised family values, and said private hardship had strengthened his commitment to mental health access. Then he invited Emily to the stage without asking her. Grant filled the silence. He announced that Emily had resigned from St. Catherine's to focus on recovery and that they were contributing her Hanover property to a housing partnership. Applause started in scattered pockets. He gestured toward Marisol Vega and the bank representative as if their presence meant approval. Grant called my name next. "Even Emily's father is here. Tom has spent his retirement driving hospital vans, and we are grateful he finally understands that professionals must handle complicated family decisions." "Come up," Tom Grant said. "You can witness what stability looks like." I walked to the front at the pace my knee allowed. He mistook the slowness for humiliation. When I reached the stage, he handed me a cheap pen printed with his campaign slogan. "Stand there," he said, pointing below the steps. I stood beside Maya instead. Grant opened the leather folder. "Emily, we can end this spectacle. Confirm that the signature is yours." Marisol lifted the top page but did not pass it to Emily. "Before anyone confirms anything, I need to state that my company will not authenticate or process this instrument." Grant smiled. "There is a misunderstanding." "There are several," Marisol said. She identified the retired notary's seal, the inconsistent certificate date, and the absence of the original document. She also explained that even a valid limited power of attorney would not automatically transfer property held under Claire Mercer's trust. The bank representative stood and confirmed 3 rejected attempts to alter the trust management access. The requests had originated from an account associated with Holloway Development. She did not accuse Grant of making them. She stated the record and the reason the trust was frozen. "I did not sign that document. I did not resign from my clinic. I did not authorize anyone to use my mother's house for a loan." I asked Grant to stop. When I refused, he threatened my license, took my phone, and practiced my signature. Dr. Patel rose from a table near the back. He said St. Catherine's had received a false resignation, that Emily remained employed, and that no employer had authorized the release of her private health information. He did not discuss her treatment. His restraint made Grant's exploitation of it look uglier. That was when Police Chief Valerie Shaw entered from the side corridor with Detective Ortega. She had been invited by the campaign weeks earlier and had stayed outside the ballroom at Ortega's request. Grant spread his hands as though her arrival proved his importance. Valerie looked at me, then at Emily. "Mr. Holloway Thomas Mercer retired as a lieutenant after 27 years with this department. He supervised the Family Violence Investigations Unit that trained me as a young officer. He has not represented himself as law enforcement today, and he has exercised no police authority." I stated, "My former rank does not prove a word against you. The records and witnesses will have to do that." Detective Ortega stepped forward. He identified himself as the investigator, not my subordinate or friend. He said a judge had authorized warrants based on evidence independently reviewed by the Commonwealth's attorney. He did not describe every allegation before counsel. He asked Grant to step away from Emily. He accused Lena Price of stealing company property. Lena stood near the service doors with her attorney. She said she had preserved business records she was legally permitted to access, and had provided them in response to lawful process. Ortega confirmed that investigators had obtained server material through warrants, not through my hands. Grant turned back to Emily. You think these people will stay when the cameras leave? Your father chose work over you your whole childhood. I am the only one who knows how to manage you. The cruelty in that sentence was familiar. It mixed one painful truth with a lie. I had missed parts of Emily's childhood. I had apologized without asking her to erase it. Grant used that wound as proof she should surrender the rest of her life. Emily removed her engagement ring. You do not manage me, she said. The wedding is canceled. I will testify. Do not contact me except through counsel. Grant lunged for the leather folder. Marisol pulled her hands back. Ortega intercepted him and told him to keep his arms visible. Grant twisted away, caught Emily above the bruised wrist, and tried to drag her toward him. Emily did not freeze, she said loudly. Release me. Naomi moved Emily behind her while officers restrained Grant. The room had witnessed the exact behavior he had spent months describing as Emily's confusion. Ortega told him he was being detained on the warrants and that the contact would be documented separately. He read Grant his rights after handcuffs were secured. No one declared him guilty from the stage. Grant shouted that the house would still be tied up for years. The bank representative answered that the trust had not transferred ownership and no loan had funded. Marisol sealed the disputed packet for investigators. Maya collected the ring only after photographing where Emily had placed it. Then Grant saw the blue tag hanging from my pocket. His eyes fixed on the number. You opened her locker. I said nothing. Emily answered for me. I authorized him. His name was on the lease. I gave him the key after I used our distress code. Grant looked around for someone who still saw the reasonable man he had performed. His uncle sat with his head down. Campaign counsel had moved away from the stage. The donors were not a jury, but they no longer provided the shelter of unquestioned respectability. To my house, Emily said. With officers while he collects what the order permits. After that, I want the locks changed under my name. Marisol offered the campaign pen back to Grant's attorney. Emily picked up her own pen and signed a statement acknowledging receipt of the fraud alert on her trust. It was the first signature placed on that table with her consent. As officers led Grant toward the side corridor, he called to me. You think this makes you her hero? I looked at my daughter. She was crying now, but she was standing without anyone's hand steering her. No, I said. It makes me the person who listened when she asked for help. Emily walked out through the main doors. Truth is loud for a day. Consequences move at the slower speed of paperwork, court days, therapy, appointments, and mornings when fear returns before memory catches up. Grant was charged with attempted financial fraud, forgery-related offenses, computer trespass, and violating the protective order. Months later, he accepted a plea that included supervised probation after jail time restitution for documented losses, surrender of access to Emily's devices and accounts, and a longer no-contact order. The court did not sentence him for being arrogant or cruel. It sentenced him for conduct the evidence could prove. His campaign ended within 48 hours. Holloway Development placed him on leave, then removed him after an outside audit found other irregularities. Lena kept her health coverage during the investigation through a negotiated separation agreement. She found work with another firm and never became our family friend. She had helped tell the truth. She did not owe us the rest of her life. Emily returned to St. Catharines after 2 weeks. Dr. Patel offered to explain the absence to staff. She chose to do it herself, saying only that someone had attempted to control her employment and that the false resignation had been withdrawn. She did not turn her pain into a public performance to prove she was strong. The Hanover house remained in Claire's trust. Maya helped Emily replace every access credential document the property and appoint an independent professional as backup trustee. Emily did not put me in charge. That mattered. Safety did not require transferring control from one man to another. She also grew angry with me. Healing made room for truths that crisis had postponed. She told me my police work had made our home feel like a place I visited between emergencies. She remembered school plays where Claire kept an empty seat beside her. I did not defend myself with the number of people I had helped. I said I was sorry, and when she asked for distance, I gave it. Grant sent 3 apology letters through his attorney. The first blamed stress. The second blamed his childhood. The third said he had loved Emily too much. She returned all 3 unopened after Maya logged them. She did not forgive him for the convenience of a clean ending. 6 months after the ballroom, Emily invited me to the Hanover house on a cold Saturday. The back gate latch I had installed was still straight. The white roses were gone. On the porch, an electrician was replacing the old fixture. Emily held up two glass shades, one clear and one blue. "Which one?" she asked. I knew better than to decide what the symbol should mean for her. "Your porch." She chose blue. When the light came on, it did not mean danger anymore. It meant the code had worked because the person using it had been heard. Emily mounted a small lockbox inside the hall closet for copies of her trust records and emergency contacts. She kept the only active key. The brass locker key, number 314, went into a wooden frame beside a photograph of Claire laughing on that same porch. I continued driving medical transport. Some people who had seen the ballroom video recognized me and asked why a retired police lieutenant still loaded wheelchairs in the rain. I told them getting someone safely from one place to another was honorable work. I no longer needed Grant's contempt to make that answer feel true. Chief Shaw invited me to speak at the academy about coercive control. I agreed on one condition: Naomi and a survivor advocate would teach beside me. My portion lasted 20 minutes. I showed recruits how to separate observation from inference, how to preserve evidence without promising outcomes, and why a victim's decision is not an inconvenience in someone else's rescue story. Teresa Bell attended one session after Naomi located her through an advocacy network. She had built a quiet life in another county and was training peer counselors. I apologized to her without describing my reform as repayment. She said, "Use what you learned. Just don't make my pain your medal." Emily and I did not become a perfect father and daughter. We became more truthful. She visited because she chose to, not because I repaired something. I called before coming over. When worry made me ask the same question twice, she told me and I stopped. Boundaries felt awkward before they felt safe. On the anniversary of the dinner we ate on her porch, Emily raised a glass of iced tea toward the blue light. There was no campaign speech, no camera, and no man answering for her. "You fixed it," she said. I shook my head. "You turned it on." The brass key caught the light through the front window. For years I believed strength meant reaching danger first. My daughter taught me that sometimes strength is standing close enough to help while leaving another person's hand on the switch. If someone you loved used a quiet signal to ask for help, how would you protect them without taking away their choice? Share your answer in the comments. And subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who preserve the truth, set hard boundaries, and earn their dignity one decision at a time.